Hello, I'm Li Tung.
I'm Irene Fung Weng.
I'm Muhammad Ikmal Hakim bin Muhammad Najib.
I'm Angel Li Anchi.
And I'm Calista Abigail Cajetan.
We are students of Universiti Teknologi Petronas.
Representing Group 6 Hand in there
to study our research for Scientific Inquiry course
Entitled Public Awareness on Flood in Malaysia.
Flood is known as among the natural disaster in the world, and flood occurs when there is an overflow of water from the river basin as has exceeded the limit of water it can hold up.
Flood is actually a general term. We studied that flood actually divides into few categories, which some of the common types of floods are river floods, pluvial floods, and lastly, coastal flooding.
There are two types of pluvial flood, which are flash floods and surface water. A pluvial flood occurs when an extreme rainfall takes place and creates a flood independent of an overflowing water body.
There may have been misconceptions about flood, as the society believes that the people live near the river banks or stream are affected by flood, where in fact flood can actually occur everywhere at any location.
This flood does not give any threat to our life, but instead it may give significant damage to the economy.
Another type of flood under pluvial floods is flash floods. Flash floods usually occurs due to the intense increase in water level in a short amount of time.
Flash flood is very dangerous as it carries a high velocity torrent of water that will result in severe damages, and debris also can be found as it will sweep away in the flow.
Lastly, the common type of flood is coastal flood. As the name promotes, it occurs alongside coastal area where the main cause is usually associated with the windstorm.
Windstorm occurs during a high tide that result to storm surge and tsunamis. Storm surge occurs when the force of the high winds forces the water to go on shore, which will cause coastal flooding.
Due to this, it is often associated with loss of life and greater damage in properties, as windstorm play a major role in determining the coastal flood.
There are more than 1 million experienced flood occurred in Malaysia. Floods have increased throughout the years since 2014 due to the climate change.
In 2014, there are a total about 1 million flood victims that are affected mostly in Johor, Kedah, Kelantan, Negeri Sembilan, Pahang, Perak, Sabah, Sarawak, Selangor and Terengganu.
A total of 17 deaths is reported, and the properties that cost about $560 million during this flood have been damaged. This has been the largest number in flood victims in the history ever since 2014.
The state that affected the most by the flood, according to the statistic, Sarawak as the state has been affected for 3 consecutive years since 2014.
Although over the years, the number of deaths has decreased, as this may happen due to the flood management that is improvised by the government and the authorities.
Floods in Malaysia are caused by a combination of both natural and human factors. For instance, natural factors of the flood such as heavy monsoon rainfall, intense convection rainstorms, poor drainage, and other local factors. Floods have become a common feature in the lives of a significant number of Malaysians.
For a flood that is due to the climate change, we believe that climate change has increased the risk of floods worldwide, particularly in coastal and low-lying areas, because of its role in extreme weather events and rising sea levels. This increased the global temperature that results in hurricane and later to the heavy rain.
Human activity also plays an important role that results in flooding. Urbanization in general utilizes more surface of concrete and tarmac that the materials are impermeable. This causes the rainfall is unable to infiltrate this surface and is channeled into drainage networks. Thus, it gets to the river very quickly, making it more likely to flood.
Deforestation can cause flooding as trees are prone at intercepting rainfall and strong water. As they are removed the rainfall, the water will reach the river channel at high rate. Urban drainage is not well planned in a busy city as it became the major cause in floods. Development has always prioritized over flood prevention and forest conservation by the governments.
Solid waste mismanagement also leads to flood, as disposal of solid waste into the river sediments from land clearing and construction. Due to the irresponsible act of the human, this increases in the resistant areas and obstacles in the rivers. Thus, high intensity of rainfall in a short period of time will cause flash floods.
The flash flood has affected a lot of individuals in many ways. The impacts given by floods are disastrous and could be fatal at some point. Awareness of the flash flood among the Malaysians should be improvised more, as this will prepare before, during and after the flood.
Damage many properties that cause loss of life and disturb the traffic, which had consequently affected the socio-economic activities. The occurrence of flood leads to the considerable damage in standing crops, houses, transportation and communication systems, education and institutional buildings, and other social facilities.
Floods will also result to the effect to the flood victims and communities. The flood victims who had experienced loss of important personal belongings and also property damage will have negative psychological effects at a long period of time. It has a strong and deep impact for those who remain to live by their homes, and it will recur.
Besides, floods also affect the economy of the country. In 2014, the flood in Malaysia has caused a serious effect to the economy, especially in the agricultural sector. The production of palm oil has been declining largely due to the flood water that is not subsiding.
Intrusion of flood to a land property at random interval will cause disruption to the capital. Consequently, this will disrupt the economic activity on the property. For instance, the property and assets in a country that experience destruction due to major flooding will require a long time to recover, and this in turn results in high cost of repairing.
As for the country of Malaysia that encounters northeast monsoon season every year, which results to vast floods, thus the significant role of the flood management in Malaysia is imposed by the government and authorities, as this program brings comfort to the affected ones. Besides, decrease the flood misfortunes and give early cautioning of the probability of flooding. Fundamentally, a common and wide-ranging methodology of flood management in Malaysia includes 4 stages, which are prevention or mitigation, preparedness, response and recovery.
First, the government in Malaysia has implemented different approaches in prevention and mitigation on the floods to lessen the damages and loss of properties, death and diseases that can be spread around. The stage also compromises operational and non-operational actions to be conveyed to ensure the regions that recognized as a flood region will be protected. The main objective of this prevention is to lessen the effects of flood on people and others.
Second, flood readings or preparedness is an early flood cautioning framework which include the procedure toward giving important flood data to general society, so people in general will be progressively mindful about the flood danger, and they will realize how to respond to flood. Along this line, the mindfulness on flood hazard is the most significant, and the awareness should be spread out to the social orders, particularly the individuals who are living in the flood-inclined region. Education will expand public mindfulness with respect to the natural disaster and the reading, particularly among the neo-educated populace.
Third, the period of flood response includes the crisis move that will be made during the flood occasion. According to the research that we have gone through, a contextual analysis of flood reaction during a flood tragedy in Kelantan was given from the therapeutic point of view occurred in the year 2014. In view of the encounters and difficulties, they experience a few issues during the flood occasions. For example, the absence of clinical staff and treatment rooms to deal with the flood victims, and hence they propose an upgrade flood fiasco readiness and response rate.
Flood recovery discusses the procedure of survey about the past flood occasion and afterward back to typical circumstances rapidly, just as lesson of both the social and economic effects of the flood occasion. This stage includes the alleviation and recovery care to the flood victims, which incorporate both material and good supports. The flood relief groups ought to be furnished with great preparing on the flood arrangement and upkeep, so to be better in overseeing of the recovery stage.
Flood, in no doubt, is one of the natural disasters, which one of them is mainly due to the northeast monsoon season.
Every individual plays an important role on the flood management, as it has already been improvised by the government.
This will decrease the number of deaths and cost estimation of damaged properties.
Not only this, our environment will be protected, especially from the climate change.
Although there may be challenges, but if everyone works together, then I believe this will lessen the flood disaster.